This is what's been missing from the whole equation the whole time, Ed. A little bit of rock and roll. Little Tom Waits from Bone Machine there to take us into the first show of the last quarter, the last show of the first quarter, the second quarter's last show, the last show, the first show before the beginning of the second quarter. The second quarter's last show is finally here. What do you got to say about that?
Are we on right now?
We're on, Ed. You're on.
Okay.
You're on.
I'm on.
You're on.
Ooh.
Boy, we need more of that.
What am I on?
You're on some serious medication, I'm suspecting.
Well.
Did you self-medicate today?
Not
Did
yet.
you self-lubricate today? Like, I don't want to hear about your relationship with your Palm sisters, but really, did you? What did you have to drink with lunch
Left
today?
and right. 3 beers.
3 beers? Woohoo! Bam, bam, bam! You smoke any weed?
Not yet.
What's the hell's the matter with
I got
you?
weed in my bag.
Oh, actually, geez. Sam, you're obviously not watching the show because you wouldn't be calling me right now, Sam, if you weren't watching the show. And so I'm just going to suggest that I'll call you back after the show at 4:30 because, well, you're on the show. He hangs up. Hey, that's a good way to get rid of anybody you don't want to talk to.
Did you see MedMen came out with the results?
Bedmen?
Bedmen? I'm a bedman.
How many bedmen? I'm a bedman. Are you a bedman?
I was worried they took my...
I thought you were a boob man. Wait, Ed, this is a show about cannabis, not about body parts in juvenile
I was talking about MMEN.
MedMen. The giant super voting structure controlled disaster we call a cannabis company. Actually, that's probably not fair.
They own 95% of the votes.
Exactly. They basically control the company. But, you know, if we look at the examples of some of the super voting structures and how they performed, and I'm not going to name names, MedMen is actually doing a great job of opening up stores everywhere on the planet. They are indeed bringing the experience higher. Get it higher. And, you know, kudos to them for that. Now, why is their share price not performing? Oh, maybe it's because
they keep losing $60 million a year.
They're losing a little bit of money. 60 million, is that how much they lost?
They lost a lot. They
Really?
lost a lot. And just to show you the magnanimous nature of the 2 top guys, they've cut their salary from $1.5 million a year to $50,000.
Oh.
It was announced yesterday.
That's not bad. You know what's funny, but
Stock went up on that news.
Anybody working here who loses that much money, their salary goes to zero.
Yeah.
You know, that's funny. Interestingly enough, in the marijuana business prior to legalization,
right,
you never saw numbers like that in the loss column.
Never.
Never. I mean, you would lose an entire shipment at a border crossing, potentially, or you might lose an entire crop to an overly technically sophisticated bunch of police officers, but you wouldn't lose money once you had the crop in hand and you were selling it on the street.
Right.
So this is the thing to me. It's like, if weed is legal and they're getting $6 to $8 to $10 a gram, how come they're losing so much goddamn money? I ask you. You know who I saw yesterday in a coffee shop was Vic Neufeld. Remember Vic?
Yeah.
From Afria?
Yeah.
I walked in and I said, hey, Vic, how you doing? He says, hey, James, great. And then I said, well, I just wanted to say hello. And he says, James, don't ever call me.
Is that what he said?
Yeah. I was like, what? Don't call me back or something like that. It was just such a remarkable remark that I was floored. I was like, what did he just say to me? Did he just say not to call him? Like, that was so weird. I haven't been trying to call him, so I didn't understand that. But
so was that the end of it?
That was the end of it, because I was, sort of gobsmacked, stymied, flabbergasted, surprised, shocked, and just a little bit insulted. So
you know what? You could have wrote a thesaurus.
A thesaurus?
Yeah, because you can say a word and then say another 20 words that mean about the same thing, which is what a thesaurus does. It's a dinosaur.
You know, that's also what crazy people do. People with Tourette's, people with autism, who aren't crazy.
You are quick. You are quick. You cut on real quick.
I don't know whether, are you setting me up here for some big punchline, Ed? Because that's an awful lot of smoke going up my ass right now.
I know, a lot of smoke.
All right, people want to know what's going down today on this show, and we'll tell you.
Tell them.
At 3:05, Connor Shaw, news nurse? No, news
doctor.
News doctor. News doctor Connor Shaw is going to be here. He's going to read the news because news nurse Ricky Gerwitz is still out. Dr. Mather Karskallen is going to be here. He is the CEO of Algae-C, which for me is the only biosynthetic company that I've actually put my money into.
Right.
And I'd like to think all of them. Manash Kestenbaum is going to be here. He's going to talk to Fraser Toms about Enthusiast Gaming.
Right.
And Connor Shaw produced a very interesting little segment called What is Clean Meat? And I believe it's in connotation of the Beyond Meat IPO. And then Ed, at 4:05, you and I are supposed to do some kind of chart analysis, though I really understand why we would be doing that. 4:10, we're going to talk to Thomas Gertstenecker, who is the CEO and founder of 360 Securities Corp, which, they're in the business of securing cannabis operations and getting them licensed.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
We got a great show here.
You think?
I think so.
Really? Apart from that, now we only see each other once a week.
Well,
what happened in the cannabis universe that you have to report from your
MedMen? That was in the stocks 278. I just saw it.
278.
Yeah.
Boy, that's almost half of what it was last time I looked at it. That's not good.
No, unless you're short.
Well, you know what? The good news is, Ed, in September we're going to start broadcasting from Los Angeles, California on a daily basis.
Daily?
Daily from our new studio down on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood.
Is that like 77 Sunset Strip?
I could give you the address, but we don't want groupies showing up and mobbing us for our...
Right.
But it's just down the street from the Comedy Store where we'll be able to put a regular harassment on Joe Rogan. Until he comes on our show, we're just going to harass the shit out of him. That's just the way we are. We're not going to be creepy. We're just going to be irreverent. Try to be a little bit witty. Try to keep the wit factor high.
Yeah.
But,
Geez, I'm watching this tape go by here, and I'm seeing a lot of stocks. Look at Tilray, 37.73.
Wow. Tilray, 37.73. So that's down like 90% from the $300 high.
Well, that $300, it's just
What? It's not real? Come on. That's the kind of thing that can only happen with a stock that is 85% tied
I know,
up in
but it was
Canada
only there
market.
for a nanosecond.
Yeah, but that's because the regulators halted it to just send the message out that we aren't going to let this sucker keep going. You're going to have to take this back down a notch. Now here's Connor Shaw with the news.
Here are the headlines moving markets today. Chiron Life Sciences Corp reported its first quarter fiscal 2019 financial results. Chiron reported a net loss of $8.73 million, or 9 cents per share, fully diluted in the quarter, while revenues increased to $2.09 million. Financial results from the company during the first quarter demonstrate demand for the clinics business and is consistent with management's view and outlook for the business. The company also continues to establish distribution channels for its Quida brand of products, which is anticipated to generate additional revenues in subsequent quarters. Weed MD Inc. has released its financial and operating results for the 3 months ended March 31st, 2019. The company reported net revenue of $3.3 million for the quarter and net losses of $2.4 million, or 2 cents per share. Emerald Health Therapeutics Inc. reported financial results for the quarter ended March 31st, 2019. The company reported net revenue of $2.13 million for the quarter and net losses of $3.64 million, or 3 cents per share. Golden Leaf Holdings reported losses of $3.04 million US, or 1 cent US, in its first quarter fiscal results. The company also reported revenue in the quarter of $4.3 million US dollars. Ianthus Capital Holdings Inc. has released its financial results for the fiscal first quarter ended March 31st, 2019. The company reported a net loss of $18.26 million US dollars, or 15 US cents per share, with revenues of $18.5 million. Organigram Holdings Inc. announced its recreational cannabis plants and growing processes have been certified organic with ProCert Organic Systems Limited. ProCert is one of North America's foremost certification bodies to provide third-party certification to the Canadian organic standards. Green Thumb Industries Inc. announced that it will open its third retail location in Florida and 20th in the country, Rise Bonita Springs, on May 31st, 2019. Charlotte's Web's Holding Inc. confirms commencement of trading of the company's common shares on the Toronto Stock Exchange effective today, Friday, May 31st, 2019, under the stock ticker CWEB. In conjunction with listing on the TSX, the common shares were voluntarily delisted from the Canadian Securities Exchange as of the close of trading yesterday, Thursday, May 30th, 2019. Fire and Flower Holdings announced its near-term schedule for opening additional licensed cannabis retail stores across the province of Alberta. The announcement comes following the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Commission's announcement that it has seen a sufficient enough increase in cannabis inventory available to lift its previously announced moratorium on issuing new retail licenses. Fire and Flower currently has 6 fully built locations on AGLC's current license queue. The company is preparing to open these additional stores at its earliest opportunity once licensed. And that's your news for today.
Oh boy, how about that, eh? Big news, eh? Did you see there's a bit of negative publicity going around in reference to the Afria GBV affair again. Smash mouth investigative journalism. And I've got that up on my screen right here. Let's just see. Have I neglected to turn on my NDI? Well, and it's, okay, it's, headline is grim. Fraud for role in Afria. Andy DiFrancesco is being sued here. This is by the gaggle of short strategists, but I don't think that Terry Buell is a trader. I think she's she's an investigative journalist. Right. So that situation, which seemed to have been swept under carpet, might yet live.
Well, things become much more serious to shareholders when their stock's sliding. In other words, people start to really look
right
and say, well, wait a minute.
Nobody wants to fly a fly in the ointment when things are flying.
Right.
But when things are falling, they want to find somebody to blame.
They want to sue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
So I can understand. Look, if you're down a lot of money on a deal, you kind of don't like the deal.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's take a look at the cannabis indexes here today.
Wow.
We're going to set these for the 5-day look so we can see what the week held. Since we're having a weekly show, Ed, let's talk about what the week held. So there's the performance of the large cap cannabis index here at Midas letter. Oops, where'd that 5-day look go? There we go. So basically, the index lost 15% this week. So which is consistent with the cannabis industry broadly going into a state of, let's call it summer doldrums, this being the end of May, tomorrow being the 1st of June. The sell-off is on. The sell in May and go away vibe is alive and well today. So look at that. Canopy growth is down 3.8% today. Aurora Cannabis down 5%.
Okay, it's interesting because the HMMJ, which is the Horizons ETF, is down 3. You said Canopy's down 3.8?
Yeah.
This index is down 3.6. There you go.
Yeah, well, actually, most of the indexes that track the large caps will be a reflection more or less of what weed does in any given day.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's funny, so the patterns that we see a lot of is either large caps up, small caps down, everything down, or everything up. But there is quite often this this separation of large caps and small caps. So today, however, it's red for everyone. It's a red letter day, Ed.
You know what? I got up this morning
down
after drinking too much beer and.
Did you do any CBDs?
CBDs. No, I did a little THC last night.
Oh, during the alcoholic portion of your evening.
Yeah, beer and
THC.
THC.
Any cigarettes? Yeah, you smoked a few cigarettes?
For half a pack.
Boy, I thought you were supposed to quit.
I went 32 days, not a drop.
Well, all right. Tell you what. Let's take a look at Algae-C.
You seem really interested.
I am. I was.
Okay.
I'm not anymore.
Okay.
Let's look at Algae-C.
Let's look at it.
I'm joined now by Dr. Mather Carscallen. He is the president and founder of Algae-C Inc. Mather, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
Mather, let's start with an overview. What is it exactly that Algae-C does?
So we're a biosynthetic cannabinoid company, and as our name states, we produce biosynthetic cannabinoids using algae.
Mm-hmm. Does that mean that you can use algae to grow plants?
So for argument's sake, algae are like microscopic plants. Huh. So we're basically taking the genes from cannabis plants and we're putting them in the algae so that they produce cannabinoids.
Mm-hmm. And so what cannabinoids can be produced, which ones can't be produced, or is there any such limitation?
There's not really a limitation. The only limitation is just the time and energy needed to perfect the actual gene insertions and finding a strain of algae that will produce it in the quantities and quality that you're looking for.
Okay. And why algae? I mean, others are trying to develop biosynthetic cannabinoids on yeast and bacteria, for example. What attracts you to algae?
Right. So, I mean, you can really start to see the superiority of algae when you break it down into kind of 3 steps. So, I mean, you've got your inputs, your nutrients, then you've got the organism itself, and then you've got all the waste products and the outputs at the back end. Mm-hmm. So if we look at the inputs, yeast and bacteria pretty much all require sugar to grow. So now you're competing with the food industry. You also need a pre-processed nutrient source in order to feed them. In addition, the actual growth of it has to be in a fermentation tank. So you're very limited in how you can grow algae, where you can grow it, where you can source that sugar. Mm-hmm. Alternatively, algae can be grown using sunlight and carbon dioxide. They can be grown using sugar. They can be grown using chemicals, and also just like a myriad mixture of all of those combined. So you've just got much more of a versatile organism that can be grown, anywhere in the world using the, abundant resources of that area. Mm-hmm. When we move on to the organism itself, I like to think of all the microorganisms as a little assembly line. So you have inputs come in, a bunch of processes happen, and you have an output come out. So if you look at bacteria and yeast, they would be like a car assembly factory where you'd have to buy the chassis and your doors and your seats from another producer, and then it would put the engine in and complete the product, right? So they don't naturally have all the material inside of them needed to produce cannabinoids. Algae are different in that they have all the natural precursors for the cannabinoids naturally abundant inside of them. So you can produce your car from scratch. And then lastly, you've got the output. So I think this is where a lot of companies have failed to sort of look into, and that once you produce your actual cannabinoids and you extract them, what are you going to do with your waste products? So algae are beautiful in that they have an abundance of utility. So I mean, they're high producers of omega-3s, they're high in protein, vitamins, minerals. So they're a superfood that's branded and is naturally, abundant across the world, and also from a consumer perspective is a very consumer-friendly product.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the sort of holy grail in biosynthetics is producing cannabinoids in sufficient quantity and at a rate where the economics make sense. Mm-hmm. So in order to succeed, you need to be able to produce cannabinoids at a fraction of what they're produced for through cultivation.
Correct.
And so where are you at in that sort of process? Have you actually evolved to the point where you can produce commercial quantities of CBD and THC using algae at commercially preferable prices relative to cultivation?
Right, so we plan for the worst and we hope for the best. So in a worst case scenario, we're looking at about a 1% concentration in the algae. And so given that concentration, we're still looking at a $350 a kilo for pure cannabinoid extract. So even in our worst case scenario, we're very strong from a business standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so how soon then until you are actually producing cannabinoids in commercial quantities?
Yeah, so Q1, Q2 of next year is the schedule for hitting commercial scale. So the commercial growth trials start this summer, in addition to expanding out our portfolio of different strains and species of algae that we're using.
Wow. And is it your expectation that producing cannabinoids on algae is going to largely disrupt the cannabinoids from cultivated sources?
I think that there'll always be that purist market that will exist out there, people that want the cannabis plants.
Flower?
Absolutely. But I think that biosynthetic cannabinoids are completely going to change the name of the game, both from a consistency and a quality perspective and just a price perspective. And it also opens up doors into the pharmaceutical industry, right, which is something that hasn't really been able to happen at a proper scale.
Mm-hmm. Have you considered that the market is going to be somewhat resistant to the concept of a genetically modified organism as a source for cannabinoids?
I mean, the reality is pretty much everything we eat is genetically modified, right? To a certain extent, everything in nature is genetically modified. It just takes longer in order to do it. The nice thing about using algae as opposed to a yeast or bacteria is algae are, as I said earlier, just a microscopic plant. So you're basically just having one plant do the work of another one just more efficiently, as opposed to using something like a bacteria or a yeast, which just doesn't fit as well.
Mm-hmm. Research has shown that some of the minor cannabinoids, which are not generally available in high quantity naturally in a cultivated plant, might be of high scientific value, clinical value to different indications in patients. Is it conceivable that you will be able to target specific minor cannabinoids and express them in commercial quantity in a far superior way than to cultivated cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it really gets cool. I mean, at the end of the day, anybody that's in biosynthetic cannabinoid production is really developing a methodology, right? It's a process. So the end goal, I think, for everybody is a client-driven designer microorganism that produces, a biochemical profile of cannabinoids and other high-value add products that meet the requirements of the client. So you could have a patient come forward or a company come forward saying, I want to treat X, Y, and Z symptoms or ailments. Here's the profile we're looking for. Turn all the knobs, tweak all the buttons inside your algae, and out comes essentially a designer James West algae strain.
Ooh, that's exciting. I don't know if the world's ready for that yet. What are the other elements that are going to be required to successfully commercialize algae-grown cannabinoids in terms of regulators?
So, I mean, obviously it has to be approved that you can produce cannabinoids from a different plant, right? I think that there's still a little bit of gray area now. We're not growing cannabis plants, but at the end of the day, as soon as you produce those cannabinoids and they're extracted, you still have a cannabinoid. So obviously the regulations need to, form and continue to develop to incorporate this, and I think that we're heading in the right direction for that.
What is to say that algae is the better way relative to the people who are growing on bacteria and yeast, who also are making representations that they too soon will be able to produce it, and they'll be able to produce it cheaper than anybody else? And who is anybody ahead of you? Do you view anybody in the industry ahead?
I think one of the biggest advantages that we have is that there's no mystery on how we're going to commercially produce the algae, and this is a big problem. So you saw this in the algae biofuel industry 10 and 15 years ago, where at a lab scale and even semi-pilot scale, the results were incredibly encouraging and everything was working. And as soon as they went to a commercial scale, all hell broke loose. I mean, I think the states put in $1.5 billion alone into the algae industry by the time they actually had gotten their commercial plants up and running and stabilized and then ready to go. So when you look at yeast and bacteria, you just don't have the same track record. You don't have all those mistakes that were made in the past. So for us, the science is one half of it, but the production's not a challenge for us. So we bring, both myself and the rest of our team, our expertise and our background is the production of algae at a commercial scale.
The government of Canada has made an investment in your company, haven't they not?
Back in the day, yeah. So, I think you're referring to the grants. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So we work closely with multiple organizations within the federal and provincial governments, helping support our teams. That's how we're supposed to, or that's how we're able to have such a large and highly qualified team without running, 15, 20 million in terms of investments to date.
And so where are you developing your technology?
Yeah, so we have 3 universities that we use. We use the University of Three Rivers. There's CNET, which is a college, which is co-located, and then there's Dalhousie University. So it's set up so that the metabolic engineering is in Three Rivers. Then we've got the actual scale-up and production in CNET, and then we've got the quality control in Dalhousie.
Okay. Are there any difficulties or complexities in extracting cannabinoids from algae?
No. So, I mean, this is one of the other beautiful things is it's essentially just another plant. So it's other plant biomass. So it's completely drop-in friendly with the current infrastructure. So supercritical CO2 extraction, chemical extraction, mechanical press, or just don't even extract it, right? Just eat the algae.
Eat the algae. Okay, so how much more capital is Algae-C going to be requiring to get to commercial viability?
So we're doing a raise right now. So we're doing a raise for $3 million right now, and that's going to essentially take us to a point where we're ready to commercialize.
Wow. Do you have any relationships in the developmental stage with any end users?
We're talking to quite a few organizations at the time.
Okay, so what would be the first range of products you'd be targeting?
So obviously the majors, right? The THC and CBD. And the rationale behind that is I think when you look at the biosynthesis sector, a lot of people are targeting a lot of different compounds. And most of the companies don't have a huge team. We don't all have a $250 million bank account with 300 employees in our own private massive R&D facility. And so the more products that you end up working on, the more thinly spread you are. So it just becomes harder to actually produce quality work out the back end. So we wanted to focus on let's get the majors out of the way, and then let's start diversifying our product portfolio, both in terms of cannabinoids, terpenes, and then other products as well.
Okay. Mather, we're going to leave it there for now. That's a great intro to the company. We'll come back to you soon, and best of luck.
Thanks very much.
let's talk about Aurora. Recently, your financials, you more or less delivered on
Here are the headlines moving markets today.
If you're lucky to buy it 3 days ago at 37 cents,
I think it has a lot to do with some of these smaller names giving really...
Recreational cannabis is here. It's quite dry. So I'm going to eliminate the stocky bits. That's all right. This guy's my buddy. If you haven't heard this this album by a fellow who calls himself Toro y Moi, this is it's awesome. I love it. Baby, dive it down for me. Baby, dive it down for me. I love it. It's fucking great. Toro y Moi is the record, or is the artist, and the album's called Outer Peace. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is foot-tapping, road-tripping, mushroom-gobbling, wicked music.
What time?
What time did you have your last drink? I had mine at breakfast.
I had mine, you know how I can tell? Because I'm sort of wanting another one. It's time for
a little thirsty, a little dry of mouth. Okay, well, we've only got to do this for another hour, and then we can get just hammered if you'd like. It's Friday. It's here's to We the North, our fabulous Raptors. Won game 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah,
that was
that's big.
City was out of control last night.
Were you down here last night?
I was downtown last night, of course.
And it's crazy, isn't it?
Did you go to Jurassic Park last night?
No.
What's wrong with you? What the hell's the matter with you? See, nobody ever has an answer for that question. It's like, well, I can tell you, I've got this, and this.
I frequented a very popular Yorkville establishment.
Strip club?
No. Did you say strip
Massage
club?
parlor? No? No massage parlor for you, Ed?
No massage parlor.
Hey, let's have a round of applause for our graphic designers and programmers here. Crystal Thompson and Christopher Jorgensen are in the house. Yay to them. They make all these logos and everything that works here, and but they're not responsible for anything that doesn't work. That's a whole other team. We have a team for that. Just for that. To make sure the shit that doesn't work. It's not supposed to work. We don't want it to work. It's not going to work. Speaking of what's working and what's not.
What's working?
Did you happen to catch Bill Nye, the science guy's most recent tweet?
You know what? I did. Well, I only did because of you.
Oh, really? Well, I was rather enamored of it. I'm going to try to find it.
You going to play it?
I'm going to play it. So here's Bill Nye. Let's go. Let's start at the beginning.
By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the fuck up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it? Safety glasses off, motherfuckers.
That doesn't seem like Bill Nye, but
that looks like Bill Nye to me. Although it's posted on a guy's account called Colin Jones. So, Colin Jones.
Is that what you do when you want to talk to someone? You call in?
You call in and Jones answers.
Hey Jones, how's it going?
Hey Jones, can you get me,
I
I need Bill Nye the Science Guy, please, to take profanity to a whole new level. You know, it was funny, I had a conversation with one of our viewers, I shall categorize them, and they were like, you know, you guys really should cut down on the profundity. And I said, the profundity? You want us to cut down on the profundity, so you want us to be more elementary. And they said, well, just stop fucking swearing. And I realized he meant profanity.
He said profundity.
Profundity.
Which I know, I happen to know that word.
You know what?
It's an offshoot of profound.
Right, which refers to?
Deep.
Depth.
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 Deep. Oh.
A lot of people like it deep.
Oh, Edward, Jesus Christ. Oh, next up, I'm going to be talking to Minash. Actually, I'm not going to be talking to. Fraser Toms is having a conversation with Minash Kestenbaum of Enthusiast Gaming. Here they are. If you're enjoying the show, subscribe to Midas Letter on YouTube so you stay up to date on everything investment.
Hey, in this segment, we're joined by Midas Kastenbaum, who's the founder and CEO of Enthusiast Gaming, which trades on the TSXV under the ticker EGLX. Midas, how's it going?
It's going well. Amazing.
Great. So you've been on the show before, but just quickly we'll go over sort of what the assets the company has. You have a ton of websites under your belt with a ton of users, but why don't you just rattle off a couple of names and numbers?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're a massive ecosystem of gamers representing sites, social media channels, and YouTube channels, about 900 YouTube and Twitch channels, and 80 or so massive online websites. That gives us 150 million visitors monthly, with us engaging, creating content in this ecosystem and gathering data on everything. Some of our sites are big influential media or community type sites such as Destructoid, Escapist, Daily Esports, Operation Sports, The Sims Resource. So each of them represent different segmentations, micro segmenting our demographic, focusing on different aspects of it and really engaging and providing them with a social online community to talk about esports, talk about their favorite gaming companies and games.
Yeah, like some of these sites like Destructoid, you may go to get a review on a game you're interested in, and Operation Sports, which I've been a member since 2007, you have a community of people who are really into sports and sports games, and they talk about it and post, and so it's quite, the audience is a little bit different from maybe like a sitcom fan. These people actually are engaged and kind of contribute to an ongoing discussion.
Exactly. Yeah, it's always exciting to find someone in the wild who's like a member of one of our communities, you know, like on a plane, you know, sitting next to someone and says, oh yeah, I'm Icy Veins. Oh, I'm part of that community for 10 years already. So it's cool to see, you know, these people aren't just online, they actually exist in real life. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So let's just dive into this big press release you guys put out. There's a lot of stuff going on, so we're going to try to dissect it.
Yeah.
You've announced a merger with Aquilini Gameco and Luminosity to sort of become a major esports global leader.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that first. Just initially, the decision to go with these groups.
So we spent a lot of time with the Aquilini group to understand kind of their vision. Obviously, we've done 12 acquisitions over the past 18 months or so. Pretty much every deal comes across our plate, our desk, and we look at it and analyze it and see if it makes sense. Many different esports organizations reached out to us, but a lot of esports organizations are just trying to get a team and do some franchise appreciation, kind of a traditional sports model. We're very data-centric, analytics-centric, and user engagement online-centric. We have our 55,000 people who came last year to our events, but that's part of our community. It's an ecosystem. So our understanding of the esports world was always that the teams are really made up of people who are influencers in their own right. They're massive celebrities. Some of them, like everyone recognizes Ninja, right? Who was part of Luminosity. It was founded, so Steve Maida, the president of Luminosity, who is becoming right now part of the Aquilini group as part of this deal. He's an expert at finding this rare talent, people who are going to become stars or are just on their way to becoming stars. And to have those kind of influencers and that kind of a brand equity is something that brings 50 million new social media followers. But it's not just what we have in our wheelhouse right now, which is people coming to our websites and reading content. These are people who are interacting directly with their favorite stars, and they have rich data, they have rich engagement. You take what we have with our data analytics and our ability to monetize, because a big part of our office, if you came young and angling to our office, you'll see our monetization team is quite strong, and obviously we're one of the first few in this space to have significant revenue streams and even understanding our business model. We said if we could take all of that, and our sales team is able to take the data and sell across all of this to provide to sponsors, advertisers, what they're already buying from us, but now not only are you able to put ads in front of them, not only are we able to put memberships in front of them, you're able to directly interact with them, with the players. So the team's competing are part of something that gives them a championship caliber level, that people really adore them, people are looking up to them, puts them right on the global world stage. But if you take that kind of content and those influencers and you couple them with us, we think that's the real model to go. It's not something we have to guess at how we're going to make money. We already know how to earn the revenue and how to monetize. So the team winnings is great, the sponsorships are great, the attendees coming to watch them is great, but if you take all the data and all the eyeballs on there and the engagement, that's our bread and butter. So we think that's the real move forward in this esports world.
For sure. So we'll get a little bit more into the sort of revenue model in a bit, but the Aquilini Group and Luminosity, just for those who might not understand, Luminosity, a lot of people recognize it as that brain game app, and the Aquilini Group. Well, why don't you just explain like who's involved and why they're noteworthy within the space?
So the Luminosity brain game app is actually a different company.
Yeah.
This one is Luminosity, the esports brand.
Yeah.
They have 7 championship caliber teams. So think of games like CSGO, Call of Duty, Overwatch, Madden, Apex, Fortnite, all the top esports games that are being competed on the highest level globally. They have championship caliber teams that are winning and competing at the highest level. So you have 100 plus different esports organizations and teams in the world right now, ranking them in various levels. Luminosity is one of at the forefront in that top level championship caliber. And there's only so many of those out there right now who have built an organization to that level. So it's all these teams competing across the full spectrum of esports tournaments and creating star power with their players.
Okay, and then the Aquilini Group.
Yeah, so the Aquilini Group, the Aquilinis, of course, are very well known for being the owners of the Vancouver Canucks,
right.
The Rogers Arena. They're one of the most prestigious Canadian families. They bring a certain panache and a certain clout and exposure, the ability to open doors to strategic partners in a different level. So while we've been this scrappy, startup in the gaming world and grown from a grassroots level to taking a public, revenue, etc., there's a whole new league that we want to be able to play on. We would like to be a global force, a dominant force in this space. We have a very broad vision of what we like to really achieve over the next few years. So having that kind of a backing, of that kind of a family, that kind of an organization was really important. So the Aquilinis set out to create this Aquilini Game Co., where they acquired Luminosity, they acquired the rights to the franchise in the Overwatch League for Vancouver, and they were very gung-ho on becoming one of the top brands, backing and creating a top brand in the esports sector. But then they also have, they're able to have the insight into Live Nation, who of course puts on a lot of events at their stadium, and they saw how there was this play of Live Nation being the owner of all these live entertainment events that go on. And then they merged with Ticketmaster, who was all these users and all this data. And when you put them together, the data, the user base, plus the content of the events became the global leader in live entertainment. So seeing that, they got a certain, when they saw the esports side of it, they said, well, if we could plug that into a user base with data who are already focused on this and already achieving it, we could really create a big monster here. We could really become a dominant industry leader. So that vision, when we spoke to multiple esports organizations and said, who would we like to pick as our horse in the race that really understands the same value system as us, provides that backing, we thought the Aquilini Group was the one to go with.
For sure. So let's talk about the money a little bit and the way it affects the share price and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I'm seeing here, because of the acquisition, there's 22 million in pro forma revenue, 36 million in cash on the closing of the merger.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
So the 22 million pro forma is 2018.
Yeah.
We're not giving guidance forward. We're just saying if you took Luminosity, Enthusiast Gaming, and our acquisition of the Sims resource in 2018, all of our revenues, that combined is 22 million.
Okay.
So that's the pro forma. We've all been growing at a rapid rate, so we'll hopefully continue to achieve that growth. So what happened with the Aquilini Gameco and Luminosity was they did their last round privately at 30 cents. They set out to raise 15 million or so, I believe. It was oversubscribed. Multiple big institutions wanted to be a part of it. It got cut back significantly, but they raised 25 million at 30 cents. They continued operating, acquiring Luminosity, furthering the business. To this point, they now are in the middle of a underwritten bought deal at 45 cents. That's open right now. It's in the middle. Potentially could be upsized. We'll see where that lands. It's not closed, so we can't really talk about that much in terms of a press release because it's not closed. But that's at 45 cents and essentially values them in our exchange ratio, giving us kind of the $1.90 rate. Mm-hmm. So the 30-cent round would have been at $1.50 if in an exchange ratio, but with the new financing that they're in the middle of completing, that actually puts us at $1.90 in this deal. So the combined entity, the implied market cap post consolidation at that $1.90 is about $300 million valuation for the total company, and that kind of puts us one level higher, of where we are right now at our 75 million or so market cap. On a fully diluted basis, will put us into a different league, and we can kind of take it from there of additional consolidation and M&A almost on a completely different level. We really would like to get that head start, be first in the space, be one of the largest in the space, and that it gives us that ability to be vertically integrated on every level, on the team level, the events level, the player level, the community and websites level, and then the actual EGLX, that our festival level. So there's a full supply chain here on a very large scale that gives us that consolidation. No, and that's what's interesting. There's so many different aspects to it, like the website, the events, and I'll bring up the event in a second. But before we move on, how does this change the management structure, if at all, and sort of the direction the company is going in? So on a fully diluted basis, we're at 50-50 in terms of ownership. So you have to take all the warrants, options, everything fully diluted. We priced the deal at 50-50. The management is also an equal management, equal board. So we're taking, one of the hardest things in terms of scaling the company for myself was we're growing at such a rapid rate. The first round we did early 2016 was at $1.3 million valuation. And we quickly we did a 10x in growth. So it went from that to $3 million valuation to 13 million to 47 million to 75 million. And now we're taking that to 300 million. To grow that quickly in 3.5 years with that amount of onboarding staff and bringing on talent and figuring out the processes of how can we really scale this as aggressively as possible while maintaining our execution abilities, meant that you really need strong resources. And I'm more of a self-taught entrepreneur. I love it, I enjoy it, and I've learned on the fly as best as I could. Right. But you take Adrian Montgomery, the other CEO, and he's someone who's operated billion-dollar companies already. He's someone who could bring a different level, and we see very much eye to eye in this partnership. So with him focusing a lot on the capital markets and the vision and the strategic partnerships, really being up there, and then me bringing kind of the operational side and helping grow internally the business. I've had to do both sides of it, the capital markets and the operations, but this really allows me to focus as the president as the internal operations, which is what I really love, is growing the actual business. And then we have multiple parts of the management. They're bringing their CFO, they're bringing Steve, who understands influencers like no other, and then we're bringing our COO Eric, who's the SVP of Finance, Mayor on this as CIO. So we have these two really talented teams coming together, and I think for me that's what we really needed to take this to a completely new stage, a new level. We're not satisfied with that status quo or being a small player. We want to aggressively become a dominant player in the whole thing.
Yeah, and one of your most outward-facing, I guess, things that you do is the EGLX event, which is in Toronto in October. Is that right?
It's in October, yeah.
Yeah, and just give an idea of the size and scale of that and how that's grown.
I mean, that's the same way that our revenues and our user base has grown so aggressively over 3 years. It's the same on the event side. You know, our first event was in a little bar with 100 people. A year later, we had 1,700 people at 30,000 square feet in the International Center. A year later, we had 12,000. And then this, that was 2016. This past year, we had 55,000 people. And now we'd like to explore moving to multiple cities. We have a lot of negotiations going on of the format, and we always want to be taking it to an entirely new league. We don't want to just grow linear, like here's a couple percentage growth. We want this to grow bigger in the vision of what we're trying to create. So, and to us, we also look at it, it's not just a trade show with like a bunch of booths, right? This is a festival, it's a celebration of our community, our online community, who we understand, and I personally am a part of, and many of our staff members are a part of, because we love gaming. We love the esports world. We love competitive gaming and regular gaming. It's just a passion. So that's what we originally tried to create this event because we wanted it. We loved it, and of course, the gamers sense that. So that's a big part of it, and we'll have Luminosity part of that. With all their influencers, and it's a natural tie-in to have them. Our Rising Stars is our new tournament series we announced, which is blending all of our online communities, the content side, capturing the footage of the narratives and storylines, along with finding that low-level hidden gem who wants to become a rising star and actually interact and be mentored by the pros. So Luminosity and all their influencers actually help for us to create the vision of that tournament series.
Yeah, and the events is that's one of the easier ways to understand how you make money, because people buy tickets, they go there and spend money, there's sponsors and so on. So expanding that is sort of seems like a no-brainer, although you need more capital to do that type of thing, right?
For sure, and this gives us about 36 million war chests, which we could start deploying to continue realizing our dreams and our vision. Yeah. So yeah.
And I guess just one last thing is just for people to help them understand a little bit. I mean, in Asia, you have things like people taking courses at a university on like how to game. So where do you see the space in like maybe 5 years or however long you think there'll be some kind of a drastic change?
Yeah, well, my famous refrain that I always say in most of my presentations is always the 4 types of gamers, from casual to hardcore, extreme, which is gaming as a fun distraction, gaming as a hobby, gaming as a passion, and gaming as a lifestyle. And esports falls into that new segment of gaming as a lifestyle, of people living it, breathing it, competing in it, watching broadcasts, creating broadcasts, living online on our websites, talking day and night about it. It's literally their lifestyle, which is me as well, growing up. So in that lifestyle brand, that's where we'd like to play in. So I think our events and our online forums, they're all kind of merging into one entity of how do we capture this lifestyle gamer.
Great. Well, Manoj, thanks for coming in and give us an update. That sounds like some really exciting things in the works. So we'll keep an eye on the company, and hopefully you'll come back in and let us know the next big thing that's coming around.
Thank you. Will do.
Cheers.
If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. Why are we not hearing any music? Damn it. I have the music on. What's going on? Anyways.
You could have bought Diana. You mentioned that company.
Well, you know what's going on here, Edward, is we are dealing with the annual situation where all of the capital that was raised in the end of Q4 and Q1 of this year, all those capital raises are now becoming free trading. So what's happened is all this stock is coming free trading, and the guys who can afford to are selling, blowing out the share and planning to ride the warrant because they're going to at least get a tax loss off of the lost sale. So when you see this pattern emerge, which if you were to look at any of their indexes, everything's down and they're all starting to incrementally inch down day by day, week by week. This is the onset of the summer doldrums. It is the best time to start thinking about what you're going to buy towards August. And August, if you remember last year, August 15th was the day that Canopy and Constellation Brands announced the second part of their merger, where Constellation actually put 5 billion Canadian into Canopy and essentially took over the company.
Yeah.
So, this always happens, and one of the ways you can tell that this is what's happening in the market is you look at the volume traders, and I'm looking at the CSE right now on my screen, and it's like the big volume traders are now not cannabis stocks. I mean, World Class Extractions, Pump, traded 5.4 million. Okay, that's a cannabis stock. ICC International, 2.8 million. Okay, that's somewhat of a cannabis stock. Earth Renew, that's not a cannabis stock. FSD Pharma, that's not a cannabis stock. No, that is a cannabis stock. Heritage Cannabis, that's a cannabis stock. But then it's Metaverse, I don't know what that is. Capital, St. George's Eco something. Let's see, let's
E.
pull.
coli.
St. George's Eco Mining.
Oh, I think
Eco Mining. Isn't that not a contradiction in terms? But it's like it's starting to the days of it's all green and it's all cannabis are now receding into the rearview mirror, because we've got this normal life cycle of capital markets where all of the invested capital from capital raises Q4 and Q1 are now coming out, and the buyers are going away, and because it is May. It is the last day of May, they say.
Go away in May. No, sell in May and go away.
So what are we waiting for that's going to turn this whole shebang around? Sector-wide catalyst. What do I mean by sector-wide catalyst? Oh, let's say Endocan Pharma, still private, takes out one of the big biosynthetic players like Algae-C, or they merge, or they do some deal. That's a sector-wide catalyst, because that's a fundamental shift in the economics of the cannabis industry will be when the biosynthetics, if they do what Mather Carscallon says they are going to do in the earlier interview, price of cannabinoids is going down, baby, and it's going down below where cultivators will be able to produce it, even those who grow in great outdoor hemp fields.
So you think some of these producers are going to have some troubles?
Well, there's several options in terms of what's going to happen. Either A, the biosynthetic one biosynthetic producer succeeds. That's the entire cannabis as an ingredient market wiped out for cultivators and dominated by the biosynthetic players, if they can do it at the price and economics they are saying and targeting. So that means that the only game in town will be the premium dried flower market, which relative to the cannabinoid as an ingredient market is puny. So that means that companies like Aurora, Canopy, Hexo, all these guys who have spent big on ultra high-tech greenhouse operations, they're not going to be able to compete. They're not going to be able to sell extract. And with everybody only being able to sell premium dried flower, there's already a surplus of capacity financed. So when that all comes online, and you can't sell your cannabis, what are you going to do? Sell it at a loss? Well, you might sell the last crop at a loss, but you're not going to replant until prices recover. And if the biosynths come on, the prices are not going to recover. The market is going to be owned by the biosynths as far as cannabis as an ingredient is concerned.
Right.
So,
and you think the market's this is
well, the worst thing you can
understood.
do now is sell. I mean, the worst time to sell stock is when everything's down. You're locking in your loss, especially if it's below what you paid for it. So when you see the market go like this, and this is what differentiates investors from traders. Investors aren't reliant on a certain day where they're going to have to sell everything. Traders are. Traders live in the moment and live hand to mouth.
Yeah.
But investors plan for these market lulls. Although if you were in mining, you would say this is no lull, this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
However, we also do know, I'm buying a copper stock. I'm still buying Crown Mining every time it dips. I'm up to 560,000 shares, I think.
Right.
Because I know that one day the converging line of supply and demand in copper economics is going to cause copper to go the other way. Then all these stocks will catch a bid, and if you're buying it and you're averaging down all the way, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
But when we say a matter of time, it's not a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It could be few years. It could be a decade. And that's where you got to wrap your head around, people.
Yeah. You're not looking for like a 100-year play. That'd be too little bit, because we're dead.
If you're Chinese invests generationally. So I invest my capital for the benefit of my children and the increase of our passing along generation to generation family fortune. In general, the Chinese attitude is to invest for the future that you will not see, because you know your children will, which at the end of the day is a really great survival strategy if you think that we're getting to a planet where it's going to be survival of the fittest.
Well, we may be getting there.
Well, we could be.
They say there's been 5 great extinctions, and I'm a little bit off topic here, but
I don't think that's off topic.
So 5 great extinctions, and so they say if the acid levels of the oceans just go down a little bit more, or go up a little bit more, in other words, acid is not a really good thing,
right? Algae can't really live in acid.
Well, and you get these coral reefs to die. Another major extinction is going to take place on our planet. Now,
Would you rather be the first to go or the last to go in a situation where, let's say, the whole human race is going to get wiped out?
The first to go or the last to go?
Yeah.
I think I'd like to see the insanity unfold.
Really?
Yeah.
And suffer the slings and arrows of fortune.
Yeah, you know what? Look at, we're all,
targets.
We're all
food.
It's just a matter of time, right? It's just a matter of time.
We're all matter and energy, which means we can't be destroyed. We can only be changed.
But everybody wants to think you're going to come back in the same way. You come back, but not the same way.
Not the same thing.
And you won't remember.
We don't know if you will remember.
Well, why don't you remember some other things?
Well, you've got all kinds of people walking around here saying, in previous life, I remember being a pilot. And what are you going to say? Bullshit? Yeah. But how do you know? Maybe they do remember. Maybe the ability to remember your previous lives in a reincarnation scenario is based upon some preparations you make in the life before you go.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's a manual floating around somewhere that says how to remember who the fuck you were in the last life. And all you got to do is figure out where to get this manual or a copy of it.
But what if you go back in the energy pool and you get remixed and you come out like a half a tree and you come out a rock and part of a cat? You know what I mean?
I would try to avoid that. I would try to come out as a whole human being. I think that's probably what's going on in the great soup that we call the universe. Is there's a competition going on the death side to emerge into the light as a whole human being. Because who's going to choose, I'm certainly not going to pick being a cow, for example, because I'm going to get eaten probably before my first birthday.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not going to pick a snake, because they're just creepy, period.
Well, maybe they're not to a snake lover. They're not creepy.
Well, no.
In other words,
obviously.
It's all...
I'm talking about from my perspective, because that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
Just as your perspective is all that matters to you. And anybody who pretends otherwise is basically full of shit.
No, I kind of suspect that we're all going back into the energy pool upon our demise, and that will get reformulated, but nowhere the same. Like Carl Sagan said, we are stardust, right? Or
yeah,
we're stardust.
You know how you see some people's face and you say that guy looks like a squirrel. He's got the face of a squirrel or a rodent.
There you go.
And you see that there's all these other people around who have this rodent features face, and you got to think, I bet you that guy was a rodent in a previous life.
Yeah.
And now he's just the human
face.
version. Rat face.
There's my rat face.
There we go. All right. So let's see what cannabis companies are going up. Let's find out. There's an interesting conversation, because sometimes the best thing to do in broadly down markets is to figure out what's going up and why is it going up. If you have something that's bucking the trend, then there might be some feature about that company that makes it resistant. But looking at the large caps here, nothing's up. Everything's down. Curaleaf's down 10%. So nothing there. Nothing to be had there. Let's go look at... Let's take a look at, let's start at the other end of the scale, the CSE index. what do we have for entertainment? Whoa, let's see. Let's order this page by. Look at that. Asia Cannabis Corp, down 33% to 8 cents. Okay, they're a new player. I haven't heard of them. Have you heard of them, Ed? No, either. No. Okay, let's look at the other direction. Okay, Belgravia International, a 3-center that's up 25%. Ho hum. Global Health Clinics, 5 cents, up 25%. Not relevant. DionyMed, up 21%.
I know, it's flying.
Now, interesting, DionyMed does fulfillment and logistics for the cannabis industry in the state of California. We have had Edward Fields, the CEO, on here before, and he's basically a product of the Silicon Valley high-tech entrepreneurs sort of league.
Okay.
Serial entrepreneur himself. And so this to me is interesting because I wonder what could be happening for DionyMed to be so profoundly
maybe it's just extremely oversold.
Well, that could be too.
And so like if there's lots of shorts involved in a stock that drops, they will come in and start buying.
Just because technicals are saying it's oversold.
Well, it's oversold, so they buy, and then buying creates buying, right? Like
buying begets buying, just as selling begets selling.
Yeah.
Damn.
You know, I've been watching Tesla now for a number of years, and you know, it's really gotten. I mean, I'm not I don't want to get into the specifics of the company. I'm more interested in the phenomenon of how a company that is nowhere near a General Motors, how can Tesla be valued the same? You know, and yet
they've got this new trick in the control room to make the teleprompter go so when they want us to do something. That's a good trick, by the way. That works perfectly.
What is it? What are they?
Well, because the teleprompter is right in the corner of my eye all the time, so if they go like that, it's like, oh, they're trying to get attention. So, in complying with the interests of what's going on in the control room, where the actual linear nature of the show is protected and evolved, we're going to watch a little segment all about clean meat. Enjoying the show, everybody? Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram.
My name is Paul Shapiro. I am the author of the Washington Post bestseller, Clean Meat, How Growing Meat Without Animals Will Revolutionize Dinner and the World. Clean meat is not an alternative to meat. It is not a substitute for meat. It is real, actual animal meat that is simply grown from cells outside of the animal's body. So in the same way that when an animal eats food and grows muscle inside of the body, we can now take cells from that animal, feed them outside of the animal's body, and they grow into the same exact muscle that they would inside of the animal's body, except with far fewer resources needed to produce it, far fewer greenhouse gas emissions, less animal cruelty, and way less water and land and so on. And so the reason it's called clean meat oftentimes is as an allusion to clean energy, but it's also just cleaner from a food safety perspective because you have to worry less about the risk of intestinal pathogens like E. coli when you're not growing intestines at all. Well, think about photography. For a very long time, the way that we had to get photos was by taking gelatin negatives and imprinting on them from your camera and then sending your film out to get it developed and then getting your photos back days later. Companies like Kodak did not get on board with digital photography because they saw it as cannibalizing their current business. Whereas companies like Canon actively embraced it and said, this may be the future and we don't want to be relegated to the dustbin of history. If we have to change our entire business model to go digital, we'll do it. And so forward-thinking meat companies want to be more like Canon and less like Kodak. They recognize that having a more efficient way to produce meat would be quite good for them, and that they aren't necessarily slaughterers of animals as much as they are providers of protein. And so if they can produce meat without having to raise and slaughter animals, many of the forward-thinking meat companies would actually be quite pleased to do that. So yes, I do think that there will be new players that enter the market, but I also think that there will be winners and losers in the meat industry, with the winners being those that embrace this new technology to more efficiently produce meat, and the losers being like Kodak, who are afraid of cannibalizing their own business and instead cling on to a business model of the 20th century.
Clean meat is practically meat that is made from stem cells of animals. It could be from beef, it could be from pork, it could be from fish. We take a sample, a tissue sample from the meat of the animal, from the muscle of the animal. And in this tissue sample, we can find stem cells. And these are muscle stem cells that can grow into muscles and into meat within the animal, but instead of doing it within the living animal, we take this sample from a living animal, bring it to the lab, harvest the stem cells that could grow into muscle and into meat, and then get lots of it, and which is practically meat. First of all, it's a matter of scale up. Making a lot of stem cells or a lot of cells, it's not something easy. Obviously, stem cells are supposed to grow forever and expand forever and proliferate forever, but it's not that easy to make them proliferate forever. Therefore, the issue of scaling up the meat is an issue, and the scaling up the production is not a simple one, but can be overcome. Same thing about the structure. For the time being, there's no real structure to clean meat. Whatever was presented until now, except one company that was able to make a very tiny steak like this, maybe even smaller than that. Most of it's practically looks like more like minced meat rather than really a piece of steak or a fish fillet. And that's because the structure, it's something that it's not only based on the muscle and on the cells that they grow, but you need to develop a scaffold, you need to develop a 3D printing method in order to develop, to have really a structure that can look more like a piece of meat. I think that it depends on how you define a product, because if you define a product as a burger, I think that this will happen in the foreseeable future. Scale up is almost there, and because it's minced meat, you don't need really the structure. That will make a big difference, and I think that within the next 2 or 3 years, we will have quite a few burgers or something similar to minced meat, probably sausages as well, that could be developed. In terms of the finally structured product, like a steak, like a fish fillet, I think that would take longer, especially because the structure is a more significant issue that needs to be addressed in order to also give the texture of the product and also the taste of the product. If you ask me, I think that fish would be much easier to make, the fish fillet will be much easier to make rather than a steak, because fish is very lean, so you won't need more than only the muscle cells, you won't need the connective tissue and the fat for that. And also in terms of structure and in terms of the size, will be easier to make. So the final answer, for minced meat products, I think it will be something like 2 to 3 years. For the final products, as a real structured product, I think it will be closer to 5 years, maybe even more.
back, everybody. How about that, eh? Meat without killing any animals. I wonder what that's going to do to a vegan. Like, I mean, is that going to drive them insane? That we've just found a way around the whole cruelty argument about eating meat? Or does that actually add fuel to their fire?
Life needs to consume life to sustain itself.
Life being a form of energy. And living creatures being transportation mechanisms for energy and matter. And energy and matter organisms need more energy and matter to live.
Yeah, so maybe we got it all wrong, eh? We're not really killing. We're just evolving.
Eating. I'm gonna eat you, motherfucker.
You gotta be careful with who you say that to.
Why? Well, I mean, you could get asked to leave a restaurant if you said it to the wrong person in the wrong way. I heard a rumor that one of our posse got asked to leave the one of our favorite restaurants the other night. I'm glad I wasn't there because
they're probably blushing right now.
They are probably blushing right now, and he's thinking,
we're not gonna mention any names, of course.
No.
You know, I was there until 5. I was there till 5 o'clock
in the morning.
No, 5 o'clock, and then I left, and then I got a call from James, and he said, "I can't believe we got."
I heard that actually. I heard you got turfed.
Steve.
No kidding.
But Steve never said to me. I said I wasn't there. I hope they don't kick me in the
nuts.
In the nuts.
Boy, oh boy, this show is going off the rails.
You know, like, yeah. I got a couple jokes, I've never really told.
Okay, on that note, we're going to go and talk to. I'm going to talk to Thomas Gertstenecker of 360 Securities Corp. I'm joined now by Thomas Gertstenecker. He is the CEO and founder of 360 Secure Corp, trading on the CSE under the symbol SAFE. Thomas, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thomas, so your focus is in security and licensing. Why don't we start with an overview of exactly what it is you do?
Sure. I would argue 360 is really the first picks and shovels ancillary approach to the cannabis space when it comes to seed to sale security services. So everything from the consulting component, licensing on the security planning and security consulting aspects, to providing security guarding, monitoring, and moving of cannabis product across Canada.
Mm-hmm. And so is this a service that the cannabis industry is in dire need of?
Well, based on the scale in which our company has moved, I would say most definitely. If you look back even 16 months ago, we were less than 10 staff, a couple of secure transport vehicles, and making something around $40,000 a month in revenues to April this year, more than 2,800% revenue growth, where we're now at more than 600 people, 150 vehicles across Canada, and our revenues hover around the 2.4 million mark per month.
Wow, that is some serious growth.
It is.
Who are your biggest clients?
I would say our biggest clients, certainly Canopy Growth is one of our largest clients. And on that note as well, I mean, there are others provincially, the Ontario Cannabis Store, the LCBO, I would say are some of our biggest clients.
Mm-hmm. So do you actually move cannabis itself securely? Is that sort of one of the key features?
Absolutely. Out of our 4 main service lines, secure transport was really the genesis of us being in the cannabis space at the end of the day. I recall doing an assessment for a licensed applicant or a prospective licensed applicant, and at the end of the assessment, I had asked him, how are you now going to move your product from point A to point B safely and securely? And he had no idea. So that led us on the, I guess, research, if you will, of how to move products safely and securely.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so now, as part of your growth strategy, you have David Hyde, who is, as I said earlier, a brand unto himself in terms of getting companies licensed in the Canadian context.
Right.
And he's now joined 360 as the president.
That's correct. So Part of our RTO transaction, part of that was the acquisition of the David Hyde and Associates component. We are listed on the 4th of January, and as that came through to fruition, David then joined 360, and I appointed him as the president of 360.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that sort of suggests that licensing and compliance with regulations in terms of facilities is now a core competency of 360.
Yes.
But his focus has been in the Canadian market. Now you're taking this whole value proposition global.
We are, most definitely, and I think it's important to note that one of our strategic plan for 2019, two main components. One is to get a better density across Canada so that we can service our clients quicker, faster, and more effectively. And the other component, the other objective is to enter the US market, which we are actively doing. More information is due out in the near future on that.
Sure. How many countries are you able to assist people who want to start growing cannabis legally in right now?
Well, I think if you look at the 4 service lines, our sort of genesis into different sectors is really the consulting arm. From there, then we establish the let's say footprint with prospective license applicants, and then we establish a working relationship. And from there, once they're licensed, that consulting then turns into integration of security systems. It turns into facilitating guarding services, and then ultimately secure transport of product.
Interesting. And in the United States, I guess at this point, you have secure transportation of the cash as well.
That's right. It's another element that we're currently looking at, and each state brings its own unique aspects to moving product, no doubt.
Sure. Okay, so tell me a bit more about the economics of the business. What kind of margins are you making on $2.4 million in revenue?
Sure. Well, I mean, we have to appreciate, first of all, that we're still, relatively speaking, young. We've only done 1 quarter as a public company. So our first quarter was, of course, heavy on the burn. Appreciating that, though, as we are increasing our revenue significantly, our margins really hover, I would say, on average around 18 to 22%.
Okay.
And adjusted, hovering around somewhere between 10 and 13%. But we do see, based on our forecasting, we do see positive growth in terms of revenue towards the end of this year.
Great.
And as we had stated in our operational update, the forward-looking statement into Q2 this year, we're going from Q1 at $3.5 million to a forward-looking statement of $7.5 million for Q2. So still a significant growth within a 1 quarter period.
The business of doing all of these things to provide security to the industry, is that a competitive marketplace? Are there lots of companies doing this? A few? What's it look like?
Well, I would say there is competition, which is always good for us. It's good for anyone. However, I feel that the competition is very fragmented. And what I mean by that is some will do some type of form of movement of product. There will be some guarding components, and there are some smaller consulting firms, typically a 1-person operation that may do some consulting for the industry because it's very specific knowledge. So fragmented environment that we see not only in Canada but also in the US, which allows us to come in and provide that seed to sale A to Z solution for clients, which has been extremely effective and successful for us.
Fantastic. The number of countries that are legalizing cannabis for medical purposes is growing. I think it's at 55 now worldwide, and certainly of the 220 some odd that can be, we know that a large portion of them are moving in that direction because the leading countries are sort of driving that momentum. Is it safe to say that a 4x increase in the amount of countries uptaking legal cannabis is likely to result in a similar impact on your business?
I would say without a doubt, just going back to our strategic plan for 2019, Canada, US, I can say with with certainty that we are looking beyond those borders as well, without a doubt.
Sure. Now, there's a lot of companies that have started in different sectors that have ultimately become big growers of cannabis. Is that one of your ambitions as well, or absolutely not?
We remain a picks and shovels ancillary approach. We know what we can do well, and we're going to stick to it.
Oh, fantastic. So tell me about the capital structure of the company. How much money have you raised? Who are the major shareholders?
Sure. I mean, capital structure really comes down to, from a raise point of view, we did 3 raises last year, all oversubscribed. We did I guess about a year ago, we did a 25-cent round, raised about $5.8 million. And then pre-RTO, we raised $17.5 million. You know, primarily used for the growth component, both from a CapEx, OpEx point of view, but also appreciating that that money was also used for, or is being used for, acquisitions. So from the David Hyde and Associates acquisition to our recent acquisition with acquiring Inca's Security Cash and Transit Solutions.
Wow. Okay, so finally, what are the big sort of achievements, milestones that you're going to knock off in the next 12, 18, 24 months that will warm the hearts of investors?
Well, I would say that our growth from a revenue point of view will not decrease. I can say that every quarter when we bring out our financials, quarter financials and operational update, there'll always be having a forward-looking statement into the next quarter. As I mentioned, growth is not going to slow down at this point in time. You'll see us also looking significantly in the secure storage of product as we move forward, and having a significant footprint in the US, and by the end of this year, like I said, beyond borders and some interesting companies. A lot of good stuff coming down our way in 2019.
Okay, great. Well, that's a great introductory conversation about the company. We'll follow it, and we'll have you back soon. Thanks for joining me today.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Let's talk about Aurora. Recently, your financials, you more or less delivered on.
Here are the headlines moving markets today.
If you're lucky to buy it 3 days ago at 37 cents,
And I think it has a lot to do with some of these smaller names giving really...
Recreational cannabis is here. It's quite dry. So I'm going to eliminate the stocky bits. Well, I just got some intelligence from the never disappointing. Can't say a thing about it.
Can't talk about it, so we'll tune in next week to hear about it.
Yeah, next week. So next week, Ed just told me about a fantastic rumor.
Well, not a rumor. I had lunch with the guy, the new president. Yeah, if you punch up the stock, you'll see this gentleman has come on as the CEO, and this technology, which I bought into 5 years ago, it was considered to be a top technology. Nobody, I got to say this carefully, but this new team seems to think they know how to.
What is the technology? What sector are we talking about here? Agritech?
What do you call it when you have an ability to influence your viewers, like you sort of move them in a direction? What do you call that? The marketing, it's called
perception management engineering. 3 syllables. I don't know.
But you do it social media, or you do. So the ticker, I'll give you the ticker.
No, don't give me the ticker.
Okay.
Because then everybody else will have it. We won't be able to buy any. Okay. First, we got to buy it.
Okay,
then you give away the ticker.
So we'll talk about this tonight. Okay.
Okay.
I'll tell you about this. Okay.
Sounds like fun.
But okay.
In other news, we are looking at the end of a very down week in markets here.
Yeah.
And
can I put up the S&P chart just for?
Well, why don't you do that, Ed?
Right. Just because I think that the picture tells a picture is 1,000 words or something like that.
Or something like that. A picture is as good.
Okay, so the control tower. Let's put up the.
You're up.
There we go. So here we have. Now, what does that look like to you? If you were to try to compare that to something in nature, you'd say
seagull
valley,
flying away.
A valley. Oh,
in the distance.
I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I got.
So look at this. So where have we gone in the last? It's been a year now. And if you look at where we are now,
I don't think anybody can see where you're pointing, Ed.
Okay. I just want to. I think this is important. So that's where we. That's where we are, folks. Now, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've made many mistakes. I just say, if we break this line.
Yeah.
I think we got to go back eventually and test that. We'll test this here.
Yeah.
If we break that, then we're going to test that. If we break that,
you're screwed.
You know what?
It's over.
I'm going to become a.
You're done.
I'm done.
You're done. It's
Steve
over.
Dunn. I'm Steve Dunn.
Steve Dunn. Yeah. Now he's the CEO of Crown company we know and love.
Yeah.
And we got to get him back on and find out what's going on in the world of copper.
Well, you know what?
One of the guys on our program was asking if anybody was buying gold because did you see the price of gold today?
Skyrocketed.
Skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Skyrockets in flight. Afternoon delight. Oh. Sky.
Afternoon delight.
There we go. Let's take a look at the gold chart, see what happened at the end of the day here. Where are we going to look at that? Should we go, where do we get a good gold chart anyways?
Well, just put up the GLD.
The GLD?
Yeah, that's the big 1-for-1 ETF.
1-for-1 ETF. So it tracks the price of gold precisely.
It tracks it. Yeah. Don't be confused by the number, because the number here is 123. Okay. But that's 1/10 of an ounce.
That's 1/10 of an ounce.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, look at this.
But there's a disparity between the bullet price, or not the bullet price, but the spot price and the ETF because of storage and things like that. So it's a little off. But yeah, this tracks it almost perfectly.
Wow, that's impressive. So what's your take? What's going on?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, because I watched this and I've been watching it. I'm a little tired of the. Let's take a 10-year chart here. There's a 10 look. So here's after the financial meltdown back in 2008. We had this happen. Gold flew. Look at this. Look at that move.
Nobody can see what you're drawing, Ed.
You know why? Because nothing's drawing. Why is that not working?
I don't know.
There we go. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay, so look at this move. Exponential move. Okay. Then we had a correction, but look at this. I want to point out, regardless of what you think of gold, it's not dropping.
Okay, now cut to my screen. This is the intraday. Oh, sorry, that's the 3-month. I want the intraday.
This is a 10-year chart, by the way. 10-year.
10-year. Oh, I'm looking at 3-month.
If you want to go to the university and become a professor, you need your 10-year.
Yeah, but look at this. Look at this.
I know.
Whoa, what do we got there?
Well,
maybe.
I wouldn't draw the line like that, but
okay. How about like this? How about like
but
this?
But something's changing, you know.
How about like that?
And you know who's one of the most quintessential gold bugs is
Eric Sprott.
Eric Sprott. I bumped into him again recently, and we were talking about it. It's getting close.
Yeah.
Because when things get ugly, and we saw when the meltdown occurred, I want to bring up this in 2008. Gold rallied like moved 4 times in a matter of 3 years.
Wow.
You know, from like $500 to almost $2,000. But look at that base is built, and we're starting to see slight ascension here.
Yeah.
Ascension?
Ascension.
Or descension.
Ascension is going up. Descension would be down.
I think, you know, if things really get ugly, and I'm not saying they will, but you know, they thought they could raise rates a few months ago, and what happened? Mm-hmm. They stopped that pretty fast, didn't they?
Wow, that's because, presidential moron is, you know, doesn't really understand the idea of long-term economics.
But rates are low everywhere in the world. Like, you know,
well,
$11 billion
because nobody has the balls or the integrity as a world leader to stand up and say, you know what, okay, enough of this nonsense. We have to stop pretending that this is a serviceable level of debt and not just an ongoing Ponzi scheme perpetrated on the citizens of the planet by the governments in power.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, is that even our media is now so thoroughly controlled by the similar interests that there is no discussion about the unviability of the global debt load and how the entire elite power structures are kept in place by this illusion that debt is somehow a debt and not actually just a bunch of guys at the top of the food chain taking the piss out of the rest of us, as we would say.
In Ireland.
In Ireland. But no, I mean, really, I mean, if you look at the explosion, the dilution inherent in value as a result of too much money being printed, which is foisted off onto the public as debt, and we're made to feel like this is our obligation to pay off, even though it's 1% of the population at the top of the food chain who really understands how easily the masses are manipulated, and that this shenanigan is allowed to continue. That, you know, as a rational person, you even bring that up.
Are you suggesting there's shenanigans going on?
I'm suggesting that all is not as it seems. I'm going to stop short of calling this the Matrix.
Well, it could be.
You might be sleeping and just they're harvesting your bioenergy. On that note, people, on that note, you have a good weekend. We're the hell out of here. Bye for now. Go Raptors, we the North. Woo!